Okay, welcome while we read about Stonewall Jackson. His real name is Thomas Jackson, but it's called Stonewall Jackson. And he's the military genius of the South that before he actually was in active combat, before the Civil War actually started, he was a teacher at a military college. And his students said that he was literally the worst teacher because all he ever did was just memorize the textbook and read it to them, pretend like he wasn't doing what he was doing. And if anybody ever interrupted him, he would just look at them, grumble, and then start over at the beginning of the page. Might not have been the best teacher, but when it came to actually going to war, there weren't many people as good as Stonewall Jackson. The dude had steel in his veins. He could fight. So, Stonewall Jackson, he was born January 21st, 1824, and died May 10th, 1863. During the first wave of secession, Thomas Jackson, Stonewall Jackson, hoped that his home state of Virginia would remain in the Union. However, when Virginia seceded in April 1861, he supported the Confederacy, showing his loyalty to his state. Once again, just like General Lee, Stonewall Jackson was loyal to the Union, but he was more loyal to his state. Jackson only served briefly as a colonel before receiving a promotion to brigadier general. Jackson earned his nickname Stonewall at the First Battle of Bull Run, also known as the First Battle of Manassas, in July 1861, when he rushed his troops forward to close a gap in the line against a very determined Union attack. Upon observing Jackson, one of his fellow generals was looking at him while all the panic's going on. Horses are neighing in the background. Some of the guys are starting to run away. Some of the guys are attacking. It's chaos. It's just disaster. And Stonewall's just standing there, staring, fearless. The bullets are whizzing past. Men are dying. The other generals are hunkering down, trying to hide from the shell fire coming in. And Stonewall is standing tall, like he's staring down the enemy. You might get here, but you're not getting past me. And his fellow generals said, "Look, men, there is Jackson standing like a stone wall." A comment that spawned Jackson's nickname. In the spring of 1862, Jackson spearheaded the Shenandoah Valley Campaign. The Confederate Army's high command had charged him with the task of defending Western Virginia. With an army of about 15,000 troops, Jackson repeatedly outmaneuvered a very superior Union force of more than 60,000 men. So he's got 15,000 men, and he's going against 60,000 men. Do you know how good you have to be at your job to outmaneuver a force that has 60,000 men? They could literally break into a ton of small armies with 20,000 each, and they could all just surround you. But not with Stonewall Jackson at their lead. Jackson's army moved so quickly during the campaign that they started to call themselves foot cavalry. Cavalry ride on horses. They didn't have horses. They just were like, hey, we're moving as fast as horses here. Jackson joined General Lee's army in June of 1862, and Lee was determined to keep Stonewall Jackson in the thick of the fighting in Virginia, because when you got somebody who's good at their job, you don't let them stop doing the job. Chosen for his tactical prowess and bravery, Stonewall Jackson did not disappoint. From August 1862 until May 1863, he and his troops played key roles at the Second Battle of Manassas, the Battle of Antietam, the Battle of Fredericksburg, and the Battle of Chancellorsville. All of those, some of the most famous battles in the entire Civil War. His widely publicized exploits had elevated him to literally legendary status among the Southern soldiers and citizens alike. You've got General Robert E. Lee, then you have Stonewall Jackson, and then you have all the rest of the Confederates when it comes to fame. Lee and Jackson's most famous victory took place at a crossroads at the Battle of Chancellorsville in Virginia of May 1863. They were facing a numerically superior Union force of 130,000 men to their own army of 60,000 men. Oh, Stonewall Jackson, you have 15,000 men. Why don't you go fight an army of 60,000? You win? Okay. How about you team up with General Lee? Oh, we give you big army. They had 60,000 last time. Now we give you 60,000. Now they have 130,000. They never can get the numbers advantage. The North just has too many people. Lee and Jackson devised and executed a plan to rout the army of the Union general, at the time, Joseph Hooker. Historians call this battle one of General Lee's finest moments as a Confederate general, and his success, General Lee's success, was owed much to Jackson's participation. On May 2nd, Jackson stealthily and quickly took 28,000 troops on an approximately 15-mile march to Hooker's exposed flank, the side of his army that wasn't very well protected, while Lee engaged in diversionary attacks on his front. So Lee had the main army, and he's attacking the bulk of this 130,000 men army, but he's not hitting them very hard. He's only hitting them hard enough so that Hooker, the general of the Union Army, believes that Lee's army is the real threat. All the while, a huge part, just a little under half of the main army for the South, has left under Stonewall Jackson's command, and they're going around to the side to attack Hooker from a side that he's not expecting, where the guns won't be pointed. Jackson's attack on the Union rear inflicted massive casualties on the superior force, and General Hooker, with his 130,000 man army versus Lee and Jackson's 60,000, Hooker loses. Chancellorsville is a Southern win. But the victory was not without cost. Jackson's brutal attack ended at sunset, and at the end of his attack, he took some of his own men into the forest to scout ahead. A North Carolina, a Southern regiment, mistook Jackson and his men for Union enemy cavalry, and they opened fire, severely wounding Jackson. So Jackson was shot by his own men on accident. It was night, it was confusion. His men shot him. He was taken from the field, and General Jeb Stuart, J-E-B, Stuart, Jeb Stuart is what he's normally called. General Stuart took over his command. Doctors determined that a bullet had shattered the bone just below his left shoulder, and they quickly amputated. They cut off his left arm. During the amputation, Lee supposedly said, he, Jackson, has lost his left arm, but I have lost my right arm. He was transferred to a field hospital at a nearby plantation to recover. Jackson initially, at the beginning, appeared to be healing. However, the wound he suffered really taxed his immune system, so he caught pneumonia. And between his arm being cut off and pneumonia, he succumbed. He died on May 10th at 39 years old. Oh, he's not that much older than I am. Lord Roberts, who is commander-in-chief of the British armies, in the early 1900s, he was writing about Stonewall Jackson, and he said, in my opinion, Stonewall Jackson was one of the greatest natural military geniuses the world ever saw. I will go even further than that. As a campaigner in the field, he never had a superior. The guy who said that was in charge of literally all of the British armies. And the early 1900s would be right before World War I, so it's a pretty modern force. That's high praise. This is Stonewall Jackson. I hope you're learning, and I hope you're having fun.